people own houses that sit on land that does not belong to them. And somebody pays the taxes for the land, and the people who live in the house or own the house pay for the taxes on the house. So this would be sort of like that. It retains some control, but giving away the land.
There are additional questions. I'm going to keep on going this way. Julie?
Hi, Julianne Stevens from Alstead. From the village of Alstead. I am 100% in favor of friendly meals and the food shelf. Incredibly important. Not only though, do we have a slippery slope with donate versus use of, whatever it is. This is a non-profit. And if we start working, giving use of our lands to non-profits, where do we end? I mean, is there another plan? Because another non-profit of equal and very valuable use to our society can come in and want some use of land and build their house on our land for something. And then another nonprofit. You have done this in the past. Why aren't you letting our nonprofit do it? That is my concern. I would love to find a place for the friendly meals and the food shelf, but I'm not sure that this is the way that we should do it. And the other thing is, if they're building a building on town land, does the town get to say what this building looks like, or do we end up with another god-awful building like our town hall over there? You know, do we have some say in this? So just some things to consider.
Susan?
Again, we're discussing the amendment.
I'd like to address
Yes,
that. It's absolutely valid. I kind of cringe at the slippery slope. We have a democratic process. The citizens of Alstead are going to decide always whether this is an organization today, tomorrow, some future nonprofit, if this is something they want to support with town land or not. That process is in place, it's democratic, and it's served us pretty well, as imperfect as it may be. As far as input on the building, absolutely. Again, this warrant article is ambiguous, and it's almost impossible without a plan and without several public hearings and review before this that anybody would know exactly what's going to be on it. It's ambiguous. So yeah, I expect a long drawn public process with people being able to discuss it. We've already discussed 2 different buildings. We changed the look once already due to its appearance. And you know, we're prepared to do it again and again. The main thing is just, it's a simple question of do we or do we not to support the continued operation of this organization on town property, which it already is, of course. We already use town hall, and of course we already have the kitchen on the end of Bragg Lane, and I appreciate the support there too.
I have a question.
I need to answer the questions that I've seen in the order that I'm noticing them. Mary Lou?
I'm really concerned about this. I mean, you said, we have to expect public hearings and things like that. They don't have to have public hearings. They say they're going to build a 50 by 100 structure. They can build it, and we wouldn't be having.
I can't hear.
Anyway,
Hard to hear.
is there any way that the town couldn't just lease them the land for a small amount, and the town would still have control of the, everybody is for the food shelf. It's wonderful. And Mary Lou does a fantastic job, and that's not the issue. I think the issue is the way that it's written up and where the owner of the property, you need the food shelf, which
losing their lease in less than a year. I am sure that there is another empty, vacant building that would be suitable, that the money that is going to be donated could be used to fix up, and they could go there. Whereas I agree with the comments that are being made. This is a slippery slope, and there's so many unknown factors that I think this would be really scary to vote for.
Rich Nalabanco. A little bit of background and something for everyone to consider. I was originally involved in the acquisition of the Bragg Lane property, as some of you may know and several of you may not know, which was how I spent my summer vacation several years ago.
Speak into the mic, please.
Yeah, I can speak louder, I don't really need a mic. And the vision at that time, and it was really Bill Moran, who I think many of you knew, had the vision, pull together the necessary private individuals to make the Bragg Lane property acquisition happen. And the vision there was it was a prime piece of real estate in the center of our town that had long-term value, given the fact that it was roughly adjacent to Millard Green. And there was a sense at the time that after we made the acquisition, that there would be a citizens committee put together to take a look at what the long-range potential uses for the benefit of the town overall. And that included such things as perhaps the vision that Matt said, maybe it's a place for a town hall, maybe it's a place for an adjunct for parking for Millard Green. Hence, the reason there was a discussion of a footbridge and the footers that we have in for that footbridge already. I agree. I find myself in the unique position of agreeing with Julie, Matt, and other people that have spoken on this, that it's certainly not a good idea to take a prime piece of real estate like that and perhaps irrevocably break it up into really what amounts to roughly close to the center or thereabouts, and donate the land. I agree that it's a slippery slope, and I also agree that you don't need to do that in order to be supportive of the food shelf and the friendly meals operation. As I said, I'm a big supporter of that. It was one of the reasons that I got involved originally in going through the very difficult process of acquiring that property under terms that were favorable to the town at that time. So I think that you can continue to support and be in favor of the friendly meals and the food shelf, and you don't need to go to this extent in order to do that. There are a lot of other possibilities, and I think as Mike himself agrees, this is a really poorly written petition article that has a lot of arms and legs and potential unintended consequences to it. So I would respectfully submit that we get back to what the original intent was after we acquired that property, and was to have the selectmen consider appointing a committee, whether it's part of a subcommittee of the advisory budget, or a totally separate committee that looks at a vision for what, in the long term, I think Michael's addresses some of Michael's points as well that he made in relation to the money in the town hall, that you need to think further ahead. And this is relatively, on top of everything else, relatively a short-sighted and, as I said, probably flawed seriously in a number of different dimensions. So, as I said, I think you can vote no on this article with a pretty clear conscience and still be able to look people in the eye and say you support the food shelf and the friendliness program. So that's my 2 cents on this.
I have a question. I understand that, I thought that I heard that Langdon at one point had offered some land, but then
My name is David Moody from Alstead Center, and I have been representing, probably unofficially, Alstead on the advisory committee to the food shelf. There's the food shelf and Friendly Meals, two separate organizations which are piggybacking on the Friendly Meals 501c3 nonprofit. The food shelf as an advisory committee was required to be established by the selectmen and has representatives from each of the towns that are represented, serviced by the food shelf. That committee has met and diligently gone around to other communities searching for property, those unused warehouses that they might occupy. None have been found, none suitable. And one of the requirements is to have trailer trucks from the food mountain, from the New Hampshire Food Bank come once a month and deliver food. You need space to get those kinds of trailers around, and you need parking and accessibility. Langdon did initially offer some land on that acre property, but later they withdrew that offer because there was some questions of toxic waste on the site and some involvement of wetlands. The Langdon property was going to be utilized by the Fall Mountain School District for a number of reasons. Lack of state support for one thing, withdrawal of state money. Langdon has not been able to market that property they thought they could. They have since offered the food shelf the use of that property beyond December 2016 if they will pay utilities and rent. And I believe the figure was about $14,000 a year for that. And as Mike has eloquently stated, that's a lot of food. And so the hope was to get the support of the town to place the food shelf along with the kitchen on the Bragg property land to get that support going. And then the details will be worked out between the selectmen, the food shelf board, and the community. But if we don't start now, the food shelf is going to not be able to operate beyond December 16th, unless they're willing to pay that money, which is possible. Thank you.
Joe Cartwright from Alstead. I'm a big supporter of the food shelf, have been for many years. But I hate to see Bragg property chunked up and to have a metal 50 by 100 foot structure for the food shelf. I like Joe's plan to have a nice old-fashioned town hall. So if the town is bent on helping out the food shelf, what is the value of that half-acre lot we're going to donate? Take that money along with Langdon, along with Walpole, along with Charlestown, pull all the money together and buy a piece of land and help them give a building someplace else that's more appropriate.
I'm Priscilla Sawa, Alstead Center, and I know that we have a motion on the floor to amend this article, but I wonder if we couldn't possibly find even more, shall we say, abstract language that would express the support of the town for Friendly Meals and the food shelf without specifying the land that would be donated for use or land that we would allow the building of a structure on land. For example, could we simply rewrite this so that it says we want the town of Alstead to work with the advisory committee for the food shelf to come up with a plan for using some town property or some town building on a temporary basis until a better plan could come. My feeling is that although we all seem to support this, this organization, the actual planning portion has not been done well.
That's right.
And so we need more time, and maybe that's what this amendment should say, is to really express the desire to help support a more detailed plan.
John?
I would just like to propose an amendment in that, saying, just to think about, I'm not formally proposing an amendment. Just want to suggest a way that this possibly could be done. The amendment would say, if there were such an amendment, which there isn't, shall the town form a committee to explore options for supporting the Fall Mountain food shelf and friendly meals, including potential use of town land and/or buildings, to report by April 30th, which is damn quick. We could, as a group, start the committee now without any, we don't need any authorization. And we would have until April to come up with an answer. This is a very serious question. We've certainly identified it as serious. And this would basically obliterate that article and replace it with, I think, a better procedure. And this committee would have to work darn hard. They'd be walking all over Bragg Lane. They'd be measuring how much space the food shelf needs. They'd be looking for buildings. And I think that's the right way to go. And I certainly would give all my spare time to such a committee.
Okay. I think that the opinion is that that would vary too far in intent to be substituted for this amendment. And but I hear your comments. We are still on the amendment offered by Michael. Yes. Yeah, oh, yes. It could be brought up under new business, as Peter reminds me. A possibility of establishing, yes, as a new article. So,
I would just say to allay all fears, I think anyone who knows Mary Lou, if you can't trust Mary Lou to negotiate the future in good faith, I'm not entirely sure who you could trust. And with that, I'd like to move the question.
okay. All those in favor of moving the question, please indicate by raising your card. Opposed? We are now going to vote on the amendment as offered by Michael. Shall the town of Alstead agree to allow the Fall Mountain Friendly Meal, Fall Mountain Emergency Food Shelf use of a portion of the property on Bragg Lane to build an approximately 50 by 100 foot structure and provide access and parking for approximately 28 vehicles. $0 to be raised by taxation, by petition. Selectmen 1, no, 2, abstain. So we will now vote on the amendment. Okay? All those in favor of the amendment, as I've read it, please indicate by raising your cards. Opposed? The yeses have it. Okay. So now we will discuss the article as amended. Is there further discussion?
So by way of comparison, the 16 acres that's out there plus minus, if you took the town office's police station, if you took Millet Green, if you took the Alstead Center Fire Station, Town Hall parking, if you took the East Alstead Fire Station and land, and you took Shed Porter Library, and you put them together, you've got 8 acres. 4.1 of that is Millet Green. So all the buildings less Millet Green that we currently use occupy, take up 4.1 acres. So the fear that there may not be room for everybody, and the land doesn't separate out perfectly, I know. But the reality of that land is there is room for everybody, there is room for growth, and there is room for support. This is a local solution. This is a great thing that we are able to solve problems for ourselves. Thank you.
Over here.
I went to the library one day, and Bob Gowdy was there with this petition. He asked me if I would sign it. And I said, I looked at it, and I'm a supporter of friendly meals and a food shelf like everyone else in this room is, I'm sure. And I signed this petition. And I don't usually do things like that. I usually research what I'm doing before I sign my name on something. So, in hindsight, I researched it afterwards. And many of you have spoken of many different situations here. In my mind, the biggest situation is we acquired Bragg Lane. We never formed a committee. We never formed a master plan for what that property might be used for. We never did soil evaluations, wetland evaluations, where we would have a road out through there. I mean, they want a piece of land, where? We have never even had the whole thing surveyed, to my knowledge. There was a question about access to Bartless Pool, and Wally said, we own that land, and the town selectmen said, no, we do. So they paid money to have it surveyed. Wally owns the land. It's just too early. We all support friendly meals, we all support the food shelf, and I would not be opposed to them having a building out there, but I am opposed to it until we get our ducks in a row. I went through exactly the same thing on the committee that I chaired for the renovation of the school building. I said, everybody want a new gymnasium. That's just one aspect of it. Classrooms, ball fields, everything needs to be taken into consideration before you locate a new building here. And it's the same situation with Bragg Lane. We've talked about town hall, we've talked about various different things. We need to form a committee. We need to come up with a master plan and include it. Like, this is too short a notice. They need it by December. We don't have anything to give them right now, except good wishes and donate some money if you've got it in your pocket. That's my 2 minutes.